Washington, a name that will live forever. Many books, of course, have been written about the father of our country. Schools, bridges, streets, and mountains have been named for him. His name is honored everywhere in America. The greatest memorial of all, our nation's capital. For a century and a half, Washington has been a center of history in the making, the center of America's growing world power, a shrine of American patriotism. I've spent much of my life searching for the spectacular, the thrilling, the inspiring, and coming home, I find that the most inspiring place of all to an American is our national capital, Washington. And of course, I've been there many times, but how I envy those who are bound for Washington for the first time. There's a thrill for every boy and girl and adult in planning what to see in the nation's capital. There are hundreds, yes, thousands of unforgettable sights that no American will want to miss. Washington is outstanding not only in the number and importance of its attractions, but also in the unique beauty of its design. Unlike other great cities of the world, Washington was planned before ever a building was erected. The distinguished French architect, Charles L'Enfant, laid out broad avenues radiating like the spokes of a wheel from the hub, the Capitol building. But for a long time, the Capitol was just a primitive town in the marshes of the Potomac. People said that L'Enfant was crazy to lay out avenues 160 feet wide. But just look at the Capitol today. In this splendidly built city, nearly 1 million people live and work, many of them engaged in the nation's business. Towering over the roofs of Washington, visible for miles from every point of the compass, stands the Washington Monument, one of the world's most famous landmarks. This gleaming obelisk of white marble, tapering into a pyramid of solid aluminum, is modern in its bold and beautiful simplicity, yet it has stood guard over changing Washington for nearly a century. Millions have ridden its elevators or climbed its steps to the observation tower. From the windows of the tower, there are magnificent views of Washington and the surrounding countryside. Most impressive of Washington's public buildings from many points of view is the venerable Capitol. Since the year 1800, it has been the stronghold of our representative government, the place where our laws are made, the birthplace of great historical events. Here, you and I may stand where every president except Washington has taken his oath of office. Under the world-famous Capitol dome is the Rotunda, a circular art gallery lined with statues of some of our greatest statesmen. About us are many works of art, including 8 huge paintings of great events in early American history. And about us, too, are the memories of great men who have walked in this very hall. 180 feet above our heads is the great frescoed dome of the Capitol. In the Capitol's statuary hall, we may stroll among bronze and marble memorials to the most distinguished sons of many states, some of whom met here long ago when the hall was the House of Representatives. But for many years, the representatives have met here, in the largest legislative chamber in the world. From the visitors' galleries, here and in the Senate chamber, you may listen in on the making of our laws. The Capitol subway carries senators as well as visitors between the Capitol and the Senate office building. In this building, and in the 2 large structures devoted to the representatives, a great volume of congressional work is done. Nearby is the Supreme Court building, one of the most beautiful structures in Washington and in the world, worthy of the highest court in the land, the court of final resort in the safeguarding of our liberties. Historic Pennsylvania Avenue is the processional street of America. Down this broad thoroughfare, past the inaugural parades to the Capitol, from the White House, which has been the home of our president since 1800. Burned in the War of 1812 and rebuilt afterward, the White House still retains its original character in its setting of magnificent old trees and spacious lawns. Millions of Americans have strolled through its historic rooms, seen its antique furniture, its paintings, its relics. And it is more than the home of our presidents. In a sense, it is the national home of us all. In the executive offices in the West Wing, the President holds his cabinet meetings, grants his interviews, and conducts the business of the nation. All the presidents, except Washington, have worked and lived in the White House. Their memories linger on, and so do the memories of the stirring times in which they served as leaders. In the splendid group of buildings known as the Federal Triangle are centered some of the most important activities of the government. At the apex of the triangle is the Federal Trade Commission. In the group is the huge Department of Commerce building, the headquarters of our post office, largest in the world, and the impressively ornamented National Archives, the strong box for some of America's most important documents. The massive Department of Justice's building houses the Federal Bureau of Investigation, headquarters of the G-Men. Everybody wants to see some of the FBI's spectacular work in tracking down the violators of federal laws, and the FBI provides you with guides to take you about. There's plenty to see, mementos of the FBI's never-ending war against gangsters, spies, and malefactors of every type. You see many weapons and belongings seized from notorious criminals who were captured or killed in breaking up underworld empires. If a fingerprint found at the scene of the crime checks with one in the FBI files, there's no possible doubt that the same man made both of them. The FBI has many millions of fingerprints on file in its identification division, ready for immediate reference. Only a small proportion of them are those of criminals. Most are the fingerprints of good citizens. In the FBI laboratories, you will see the scientific equipment and the thorough tests which help to solve crimes and bring criminals to justice. For instance, there's the ballistics test, which shows through the markings on a bullet and in the barrel of a gun whether or not the bullet was fired from that particular weapon. There's something to tell the kids back home. Yes, sir, the FBI could show Annie Oakley a thing or two. Brother, that's shooting. In these buildings, there's another kind of shooting, troubleshooting for the American farmer. The Department of Agriculture's activities reach out to farms all over America. Now we're coming to a feature of Washington that everybody talks about: money. Stored in the Treasury under strong guard is the largest accumulation of currency under one roof. The Treasury was built before the Civil War, but it is still one of the most attractive buildings in Washington. In the Treasury's Bureau of Engraving and Printing, largest plant of its sort in the world, you can see some of the most interesting work done in Washington, the designing, printing, and finishing of our paper money, stamps, and securities. From special galleries, you can get a good view of many of the operations, but don't expect samples. Money by the bale, money by the carload. So expert is the work done in the Bureau of Engraving and Printing that no counterfeiter has been able to exactly duplicate the quality or design of our currency. This is but one of the many government activities open to your inspection. Washington is the nerve center of our foreign relations. From the impressive new State Department building, our diplomatic activities extend to lands in every part of the earth. Not far away are the embassies and legations of more than 60 nations, great and small, in all parts of the world. In no other city are there the flags of more nations, nor so many American flags. The Pan American Building, established by 21 nations of the Western Hemisphere, dedicated to inter-American unity of interest. Its most impressive feature is the Spanish patio with plants and trees, recreating the charm of the lands to the south. Washington is the center not only of our diplomatic relations, but also of our national defense. The Pentagon Building, constructed during World War II across the Potomac River from crowded Washington, largest office building in the world. Access is provided by 30 miles of modern highway with clover leaves and 21 overpasses. There are many other military establishments in and around Washington, and the Washington street scene is liberally sprinkled with uniforms in peacetime as well as during war. Even more a part of the Washington street scene are the multitudes of visitors. In the course of a year, 2 million, 3 million, or even 4 million Americans come to see the fascinating, inspiring sights of the nation's capital. They come individually and as families. They come in small groups and large groups, representing schools and various organizations. They come from the Midwest, the Far West, from the North, the South, in fact, from everywhere. It's all aboard for a thrilling experience, and the trip itself is part of the fun. Whether the journey to and from Washington is long or short, the advantages of modern travel make the ride thoroughly enjoyable. The Baltimore and Ohio offers the traveler convenience. All the famous B&O extras. There's good food, courteous service, and on-time dependability. In city ticket offices along its lines, travel representatives make it easy for you to visit Washington. They'll help you plan your trip. They'll tell you all about the low-cost, all-expense B&O tours. The B&O serves hundreds of cities and towns east of the Mississippi. Many who live beyond these lines ask their local agent to route them via Baltimore and Ohio. The route is picturesque, passing through such places of historic interest as Harper's Ferry in the Blue Ridge Mountains. The Baltimore and Ohio is the only railroad between the East and the West which passes directly through Washington. Union Station, a magnificent structure worthy of our national capital, is the end of the ride for the millions who come to Washington, and the gateway to experiences that they'll always remember. The District of Columbia is the greatest art center in the world. The Corcoran Art Gallery houses varied and excellent collections, and so does the Freer Gallery of Art. The newest and most spectacular of the galleries is the magnificent National Gallery of Art, which belongs not to just one city, but to all of us. That gallery is the gift of Andrew Mellon, for many years Secretary of the Treasury, and visitors are fascinated by its beautiful vistas and its collections of priceless sculptures and paintings dating from the 13th century. Among the most popular of the masterpieces of art are The Return of the Prodigal Son by Murillo, the Alba Madonna by Raphael. On a hill overlooking Washington stands the magnificent Cathedral of Saints Peter and Paul, familiarly known as Washington Cathedral. Its splendid Gothic architecture and the beauty of its gardens and landscaping make it a leading attraction for visitors. When completed, it will be one of the 10 largest cathedrals in the world. Another attraction of universal interest is the Memorial Church of the Holy Land, the Franciscan Monastery. It stands like a bit of the old world in its setting of monastery gardens. Here you may see faithful reproductions of the shrines of the Holy Land, as well as of the Grotto of Lourdes. Years ago, a congressman said, there ought to be one library where everything is. And this is it, the Mammoth Library of Congress. With nearly 10 million volumes and vast collections of other sorts, it is the largest single library in the world. It's truly a national library, ready to serve everybody in America from schoolboy to president. Among the library's priceless exhibits is the Gutenberg Bible, the first book